Heya, it's Dua Lipa, and welcome back to my podcast, Dua Lipa at your service. Without really planning to, identity is one of those themes that's come up in some form or another in nearly every conversation I've had on this show since we began a year and a half ago. It's natural. I think we spend so much time trying to figure out who we are, even if it feels like sometimes we have multiple identities. Who do I want to be when I wake up in the morning? What has changed? And what's remained the same since I was in school? And who will I be tomorrow? Identity remains at the top of my mind, and it's a topic perfectly suited for my guest today. You'll know Troye Sivan as the singer and songwriter behind singles like My and Bloom, as well as this summer's incredible sweaty smash hit, Rush. This year, he also starred in the HBO series The Idol, and soon he'll release his third album, Something to Give Each Other. But Troye and I have known each other since he invited me to open his Suburbia tour in America in late 2016. On the road, we became proper, real-life friends, and ever since, we've always found the time to connect whenever we're in the same city. Troye has spent so much of his career speaking candidly about the role identity has played in his work. In our conversation, you'll hear him talk about many different sides of his own identity. His queerness, his Jewishness, his Australianness. He's got such a unique perspective, and I loved hearing how he balances all these parts of himself. Please welcome today's At Your Service guest, the incomparable Troye Sivan. Hey, Troye, how you doing?
Hey, good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to do this.
Me too.
It feels weird that we're not just having dinner and like martinis or something
and
chilling and catching up. But I'm just so happy that you wanted to do this. And
I've always thought that it was so cool that you do this, by the way. I think this is like so sick.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I love doing this. And it's also like really interesting diving in and doing research about your friends. And doing all like the backstory
really
and
weird.
Watching all your old YouTube videos and
oh my god,
it's been really fun. I've loved seeing the whole.
Those
journey.
are the ones that I haven't privated, by the way. There's many more that I have like made private.
Well, maybe one day.
No.
On a night out or something, you can show me the other ones.
I'll whip them out.
I'm really excited to talk to you about identity, which
cool.
I think is. Well, kind of a topic that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And I feel like I'm juggling on any given day my identity as a Brit, as a Kosovan, a woman, a singer, a performer, a businesswoman. You know, I feel like, I don't know, just different sides of myself that I want to like explore more of. And I feel like with you,
totally,
you're also just like similarly multifaceted. And especially as your career has continued to... excuse the pun, bloom. At this moment, how would you identify or describe yourself?
It's funny because I think it always comes back to really core principles, you know, that don't change that often. Like, you know, this is your identity, this is who you are. And so for me, it goes back to like Australian. I feel really Australian, even though I've been traveling and living overseas for like a long time. That's something that is like super important to me. I feel really Jewish. That's really important to me. Even though I'm not religious, like I don't even believe in God, I don't think. Culturally, I feel really Jewish. I feel queer for sure. And I feel like a creative. I would say musician first, but like a creative. I think those are the things that if you had to really, really strip me to like my bare bones, those are the things that I would first use to describe myself. Because like the creative obviously describes what I do for work and how I think maybe people perceive me. But then like the Jewish thing, for example, that just feels like family to me. And that feels like I would have used the same words to describe myself when I was like 6 years old.
Something I really love about you is how close you are with your family. And I feel that that's something that really, really keeps you grounded. I mean, they're always around.
You're similar, right?
I think it's so important when everything is so mad in our surroundings and we travel a lot and there's so many other things to divert our attention to, that when you have that kind of feeling of home to always go back to, it is, I guess, a really settling feeling, which I think is is really great, because what I've seen from you is like you're able to jump onto so many different things but still really remain authentic and true to yourself. And I'm really, really excited to dive into your new music. But I thought we could actually start by rewinding a little bit to the start. And you've always been acting and you've been making music, but your career really took off on YouTube when you were actually just a teenager. Can you tell my listeners the sort of things that you were posting and why YouTube felt like such a safe space for you to turn to at that age?
Funny thing is, normally in interviews, I'll like brush over the YouTube chapter. And what I'll say is like, I used to sing on YouTube, which isn't a lie, but it's also just not the whole truth. There was definitely an era of making YouTube videos. It was like everything from like the ice bucket challenge to waxing my legs with Zoella. And I'm not embarrassed about it at all. It just feels literally like if you were to get your like home movies that your mum or your dad filmed and share them with everyone and have everyone kind of like watch them in real time and then have this weird nostalgia for them when you get older. Because it was a long time ago now, and I feel like a kid in those videos, because I started doing it when I was 12. I think for me it was a couple of things. I was a little bit nerdy. Like I definitely wasn't one of the cool boys. Like they played footy and they were like super academic, and I was kind of neither of those things. And I really just loved music and the arts, and my school didn't have a good arts program at all. So I think for me, the internet in general was like a space where I found a sense of community, and I found like other people that were into the same things that I was. And so then I started seeing people make YouTube videos, and I was like, oh, this looks fun as hell and like easy. And it was all sort of all of the things that I love. Like I got to play on my computer and like learn how to edit. And this is like around the same time that I was learning how to use Photoshop. I just loved all of it. And it felt like such a fun way to express myself. And it would be the tiniest thing. Like I'd be really excited about like, I learned how to put reverb on my voice. Let me film myself singing so that I can put reverb on my voice. And then, I don't know, just like weird little things like that where it just really made me excited. And so then I started uploading the videos, and the first video I uploaded, I think it got like 1,000 views. And I remember I used to sing in the city in Perth. Like I used to busk or whatever, you know, like put out a hat and busk. And I was just like, this is so many more people than have ever watched me sing in the city. So I just kept going with it.
I guess at that point, you know, when I think about it, you probably didn't think much about it. You just kind of put things out that made you feel good. But was there anything in the back of your mind that you felt like you had to navigate, especially at that age, like what you wanted to put up, or was like nothing off bounds kind of thing? Was it just whatever you felt like in the moment was something that you would go for?
I was pretty like considered and everything. I think I knew from like an early age that if you put something on the internet, it's up there forever, you know? So I was definitely aware of that. One thing I am really happy about is that because it felt so insular, like this was something that I did from my bedroom, it never felt like it was going to affect my real life at all. I was still like going to school and whatever, and I wasn't worried about anybody teasing me because it just felt like I was doing this into like the abyss, you know?
Kind of like an alter ego of some sort. It's like that's
your
online persona, and then you had your real life thing. Yeah.
And so that was really comforting because I could just kind of do what I felt was right or whatever at the time. And then it just became really fun. Once I started going to like these YouTube conventions and stuff like that, it literally felt like that was my kind of high school experience. We were like traveling, I got my first boyfriend, and like all this stuff started happening that was really, really just like fun. And we were doing it all together. And so it was a good vibe.
Yeah. Having you on the podcast today has me thinking about the first time we met, which was when you graciously invited me to open for your 2016 Suburbia tour across America and Canada.
Do you know, it's like a punchline in my life now. Like,
what?
No, just in general, people like anytime you ever come up, they're like, oh, do you know her? I was like, yeah, you want to know something crazy? She opened for me on tour. And people like crack up laughing because it's insane. It's so funny.
It's honestly like one of my fondest memories ever. And I'm it's also one of like the proudest tours that I'd ever been a part of. And I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to you, but really it like completely changed my life. And it was such a gamble for me because I had to like find the money to go on this tour. I was just starting out. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to go on tour with Troye Sivan and I have to go up on stage and like really put on a good show and hope that maybe his fans would resonate with my music. And it was just I remember it being such a big deal, and it was just such a crazy opportunity for me to be able to do that. And then there's so many like fun, crazy stories from the tour, like our last night in Atlanta and me accidentally popping open a bottle of champagne in the back of an Uber and getting in a lot of trouble with the driver. But maybe let's not embellish on that for this podcast.
That was the best.
And then when we were in Toronto and the 2016 election was happening.
Oh my God, yeah.
And like the website was crashing for the Canadian immigration. And we're like, yeah, maybe we're not going to leave Canada. We'll just stay here.
Wow, yeah. I remember being on stage that night when Trump got elected, and you could definitely like feel it in the air, even though we were in Canada. And then the sort of like dread of going back into America. I remember it feeling like a really heavy time in the world, obviously. And then we were having this really beautiful tour. That was like such a nice experience.
It was really an interesting and a fun time too. You know, I have very, very fond memories. I thought it'd be a fun opportunity to just ask you what that particular tour was like for you at that point in your career, and what kind of stands out the most for you after all these years.
First of all, I remember being so excited that you were doing it, because Be the One is like one of the best songs ever, like genuinely.
Thank you.
And that was all I needed to know, was that you were the singer of that song. And I was like, okay, sick. And then I don't know if people know this, but that tour birthed a child, because our managers at the time ended up like, I mean, they didn't conceive her that night, but no, they're fully married now and have a kid and everything. So, and like I met you, and just, it was, what an amazing time. And I remember my parents were on that tour, and in general, that phase, I was still so out of my depth, and I still am, but I'm sure you remember. But in general, I feel like artists, when you get signed, maybe it's different now because like you don't really have to do promo in the same kind of way as you used to, I don't think. But like those first few years are really intense, like really, really, really intense. And so I remember being tired, but also like loving every second of it, and just being overwhelmed, good and bad, but just totally overwhelmed.
Yeah, I do think of that whole process where I kind of like relate it to being on the hamster wheel a little bit.
Yeah.
It's just like kind of a non-stop shop of like touring, which is really exciting. But in every city that you go to, you're doing interviews, you're doing photo shoots, you're doing meet and greets, you're meeting up with, you know, people. You know, there's a constant agenda and like plan of the rundown of your day that probably now in the next tour that you're going to go on, you'll have more time to just like explore and connect with people and people differently. I guess speaking about connecting with people, August marks a decade since you posted your incredible coming out video on YouTube.
Wow.
Which I'm certain gave so many young queer people not only hope, but also the knowledge and visibility that they weren't alone in this world. When you posted it, you were just 18. Looking back on it 10 years later, like, what do you remember about the experience of filming it and releasing it?
So I had already come out to my parents a few years before, when I was 15. And so I'd kind of got to the point where I felt really comfortable in my own personal life. And I also happened to kind of have this big YouTube audience at the time. And those coming out videos just completely changed everything for me personally. You know, that's how I found the courage to come out in the first place to my family, was through hearing other people's stories. And they can be really scary because, you know, you hear the stories, the good and the bad, and people that their families have received them really well, and people whose families don't receive it well at all. And also, I know it sounds crazy to say, but it was a very different time when I came out, and it was really, really, really scary. And so when I was 18, by that point, I had already kind of like really, really come to terms with it. because I had posted these YouTube videos, another thing that was on my mind is I didn't want to get outed. I wanted to live my life. And I was 18 and I wanted to be able to like, start dating and stuff like that. And I was really scared that because I had this like online audience, I was scared that someone was going to out me. And I was about to sign my record deal and I did not want them to be able to tell me to stay in the closet because I was like, super comfortable with myself. And so I just kind of saw it as like an opportunity to give back to the community that helped me, which was like the online queer YouTube community, basically. Get this thing off my chest and make sure that I do it in a way that feels comfortable for me, and also kind of set myself up with my label that I get to be truthful from day one in my music, which was like, I didn't know what else I was possibly going to do, And so I think I was in LA when I filmed it because I was staying at this group house with a bunch of other YouTubers. And I remember I definitely was out to a few of them, but I remember I just went downstairs and like turned on the camera and I did like one take, obviously. I wasn't going to like reshoot it, And I don't really remember editing it. I don't remember if there's any cuts in the video. I haven't watched it, but I just like posted it and then I went upstairs and joined the group. And then I remember it going crazy. That was when I got overwhelmed. Like, I don't remember being super scared hitting upload, but I remember feeling extremely, extremely overwhelmed with like beautiful, positive emotion because I can't really describe the relief. I was conscious of the fact that I was not straight since I, like, literally as long as I can remember. It's one of my earliest memories. I don't know why I was like super self-aware about it. And I knew that it was something that I did not want to be. And I thought that it was something that I was going to take to the grave with me. Like I would never, ever, 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 ever tell anyone. And then somehow my best friend, Kayla, she and I were talking when I was 15 and I told her after like this, we were talking for like hours and hours and she kind of like got it out of me, I guess. And I didn't know what it felt like to live life without that weight. It was just such a relief that everyone knew exactly who I was now and that I could just start my life essentially,
It's amazing hearing you talk about it. Just kind of taking that rhetoric into your own hands is so important. And I can't even imagine what that fear must have been like, the idea of, oh, someone might out me or someone might take this moment away from me. I mean, I can't even comprehend that feeling, especially I think it's so powerful as well that you did it before you signed your record deal and you're like, this is who I am. I'm not going to change the stories that I'm going to write about. This is the love that I feel is true to me. This is like who I am. And I think that's just amazing. I just, it's beautiful.
Also, to my label's credit, I woke up to like a congratulations email from them the next day, like with like pride flags and stuff. So it was really cute.
Perfect. Yeah. As we've been talking a lot about identity, and I know like identity is like a really multi-pronged concept, I also think I'd be remiss to not go back and ask you about growing up in an Orthodox community in Australia. And I've read, and you also said that you don't consider yourself particularly Jewish. And you refer to yourself more so like culturally Jewish. And I wonder, in what ways do you still see that part of your identity showing up today?
It's weird. It's hard to describe, I think, to people who maybe aren't Jewish because, okay, so it is a religion, right? Obviously. But there's just such a deep cultural side to it too. And so for me, for example, that looked like going to a Jewish school, right? There was only one Jewish school in Perth. So all of the Jewish kids went there. We didn't really socialize that much outside of the school, which sounds weird. Like it sounds like scary and culty or something, but it's just like, that was all of our friends and stuff like that. So I grew up pretty much only really knowing Jewish people. And then the things that we all had in common was that, like, on Friday night, we would have dinner with our families and like we would go to each other's houses for Shabbat dinner and stuff like that. And then the high holidays, and within the community, because there was only one school, there was the whole scope of how like observant you are with the religion. So there was people who were super, super, super religious who would like, my best friend growing up kept kosher, like wouldn't eat out at restaurants and, wore a kippah and like kept Shabbat and did all this stuff. Then you had my family who were like pretty observant when I was like a little kid and then grew out of it. And after my bar mitzvah, after I was like 13, I I basically stopped everything. Like I didn't really do anything except for the stuff that my family did. But the thing is that I feel Jewish in the same way that I feel like Australian or something. I don't know. It's like the food, it's the family, it's everything. That's who I am. I think as well for me, my dad's family, the only line that survived the Holocaust was my direct line. And so I think for me, there's a sense of pride and like duty that even no matter how far I kind of stray away from God or whatever, like my kids, it's like super important to me that they know that they're Jewish. I would imagine it's similar to like, no, I can't really relate it to anything. Like what food makes you think of your family?
I guess all like a lot of traditional Albanian food
Right.
that I ate at home, always makes me think of Kosovo. But I completely, relate to the idea of having really deep roots, even though we're not particularly religious. But I think just like the idea of being from Kosovo or being Albanian and really feeling proud of it and wanting that to, continue on even through generations, I think is so beautiful and I think is so important. But it always evidently goes back to that idea of family that I, kind of touched on that is super similar between us. And I know that during COVID, you moved back to Australia and I've been there a few times for tour and I actually saw you last time I was there in Melbourne. And when I think about, our crazy lives and all the traveling that we do for work, I guess I just really wanted to ask you what does home mean for you?
It's probably just where my family is because like it used to be Perth. And then when I was living in America, my family moved from Perth to Melbourne. And now like I don't think of Perth, so it's definitely not the city. It's like, it's where my family is. And I really like having a space that feels like mine. That's something that I had for the first time in COVID is like I renovated my house in Melbourne and made it something that I'm really attached to as like a space. And I've realized that that's something that I feel really lucky to have. So a physical space that I've had some sort of say in is important to me. But I think the number one thing is just like where my family is. We could go anywhere. I feel like we would be fine.
Yeah, I love that. I think I feel the same. I think sometimes the concept of home is kind of really difficult to pin down. But as long as it's a place where you feel safe, where you're around people that you love, then kind of you can make anywhere home. We'll be right back.
Hey there, it's Michelle Visage. My podcast, Rule Breakers, is back for another season.
When you are a trailblazer, do it, be it.
It's real talk with friends and stars who I call rebels.
Sometimes it can look good, sometimes it can look a bit trashy. I just love it.
In the new series, we speak to the likes of Adam Lambert.
She is snatched.
Hello, Jake Shears.
Hey, Michelle.
Jesse Ware, Katie Price, and Kesha.
Hi, oh my God.
Honey, my podcast is so juicy, it's like the forbidden fruit you can't resist.
Michelle Visage's Rule Breakers.
Listen on BBC Sounds.
Now I want to turn back to your new music a little bit, including your new single, Rush. Which you've just released.
Yes.
And everyone's super excited and it's amazing. The last time you dropped an album was 2018 with Bloom, which is crazy actually. You've been working on this for a long time. What do you think's changed about yourself between then and now, and what you're most excited for your listeners and fans to learn about? And what do you think are some things that you learned about yourself as well in these few years too?
It's crazy to think about because you've known me the whole time. So you know exactly everything that I'm like talking about. But I didn't mean to take 5 years to make it. It was like a mixture of a bunch of things. It was COVID. I filmed The Idol for like a year, like all that stuff. But basically I went through this massive breakup. And then I think I had this idea in my head that I was the authority on intimacy and what like real intimacy was and what it should feel like and what it should look like and everything, because I had this like serious boyfriend of 4 years and whatever. And then in being single, First I thought I was going to write like a breakup album, which like really bummed me out. I didn't want to do it. Anyways, I started to like open myself up the tiniest little bit to new people. And there was this one particular guy, and he was like, "Can I sleep over?" And I was like, damn, I really don't do that. Because I think, again, it was that thing of like, well, why would I pretend to be this guy's boyfriend for a night? Like, I just met this guy. Why are we going to sleep together and like cuddle and stuff? That just felt really awkward to me. And anyways, I ended up saying yes, that he could.
Despite your thoughts.
Despite my thoughts. We were talking and he was like, no, this is like my favorite part of hooking up with someone. It's like, this is one of life's greatest pleasures. It's like, even if I never see you again, the fact that we get to like have this moment and this like connection just for one night is like, I think that's really special. And I don't know why, it just rocked my world and like blew my mind, because the truth is I loved cuddling him that night, and like I haven't seen him again, but we just had this really, really nice moment. And so everything started to like click into my head where I was like, I'm single, I'm still kind of young. COVID is like we had periods in Melbourne where there would be zero COVID and we could go out. And I fell in love with going out and partying. I was partying more than I ever have. And like, that's why Rush was such an important song to me. I wanted one song that was just unapologetic club, like hot, sweaty. And I wanted to kind of kick off the album with a song like that. But I hope that the album, when people hear it, feels like those couple of years of just like finding resilience in yourself that you didn't know that you had, finding community in ways that you didn't know you could, relying on your friends, loving music, meeting new people, like exploring, just all of these awesome things. So I have to say thank you to that guy, because he totally like set me on this path.
Yeah, it's funny how some people just come into your life exactly for like a special reason. They leave a special mark on your life, and then you can carry on in a... Yeah, it's sweet when things like that happen. I guess Bloom was naturally much more of a mature album than your first record, Blue Neighborhood. And I understand that your lyrical honesty and transparency kind of came with a lot more poking and prodding from the press and everybody wanting to know like what certain things about your personal life, what they meant, what certain words were, even when it was kind of... When you write a song, you put kind of subliminal messages in, and they're meant to be subtle. And then you have people being like, yeah, but can you just tell me what this means? When you're doing all the promo and stuff. Have those sorts of questions or responses or stuff like that ever changed the way that you lay it in on your art? Or do you just not give a fuck and you're just going to do what you want to do and keep people guessing?
No, I'm going to do what I want to do, definitely. It doesn't change the way that I write. But, I haven't really started doing interviews for this album yet. Like, this is, one of the first. And I don't yet know how I'm going to talk about few songs on there. And I think when it comes to that, I'm not going to sacrifice the expression and the catharsis that I need. And I try and handle everything like ethically behind the scenes. If something is about someone, I'll try and like send it to them, or if I feel like it's going to be obvious that it's about them and whatever. But when it comes to having to explain myself and explain the music, I think I'm just going to, I sort of have figured it out on like a case by case basis, and that's worked sometimes and it hasn't worked other times as well. Sometimes things get blown way out of proportion, in a funny way, but like, for example, Bloom, the song, has like defined the way that people, I think, talk about me, at least the stuff that I see. And it's like, I don't know, it's just interesting. So it's like, I think I do have to be a little bit more careful than maybe I was last time when deciding how much to explain and how much to just like be like, I don't know, listen to it and you tell me what you think.
All right.
Yeah.
It's exciting though. I think always just like pushing the boundaries and talking about your personal experience in whatever way you choose to. I think that's also like down to you, like you say, case by case basis. You can decide whether or not. It also depends how the interviewer asks you. The thing is like a lot of the time when people ask me like, oh, does the person that you wrote the song about know that you wrote it about them? And it's just like, well, I think if they were to listen to it, there are certain things that only that person will know if that makes it about them,
Yeah.
But other than that, I have no plan on trying to like dish that out or,
No, that's the thing. Same. That sounds really scary and not fun.
Yeah, and not exciting at all. I'm like, you know what?
Yeah.
I much prefer that these songs find a home with someone else in the way that it means something for them. And then what it means for me is completely personal. It's what helps me like perform them on stage. And,
Totally.
you know, it gives me something completely different. So I think it depends.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing I take comfort in is it could be made up. Like, you don't know.
Completely.
I could
You
have
have
been
no
feeling
idea.
really creative in the studio and made up these two characters and like, you know, whatever. So, yeah,
You'll just decide what story you want to tell that day.
exactly.
Speaking of stories, you are one of the stars of the weekend's new HBO series, The Idol. And I actually saw somewhere that you refer to your role as the first time in your life where you really felt like an actor. And I thought that was really interesting because you've done a lot of acting work. And I just wanted to know what to you felt so different about this project in comparison to your roles in like Boy Erased or 3 Months, for example.
I think really what I was referring to is just like the fact that we filmed for so long and that we were going to the same place every day and I wasn't really working on music at that time. It just felt like a real job. And it felt like I think also like the fact that it's an ensemble cast, we were all kind of showing up, clocking in every day as like actors, you know, that was what we were there to do. I was like, okay, this is like what it feels like to be an actor. But I still don't feel like an actor first. I don't know why. I just like, I don't know if it's because I have this other thing that nothing will ever compare to the way that I feel about music. I don't know if maybe it's just that. But then, you know, I see someone like Lily who cares about acting in the way that like you and I care about music. And she goes to sleep thinking about it and she wakes up thinking about it. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, okay, I don't know if I have that. Like, I don't know if I do. And I really, really enjoy it. I really, really do. But if someone was to say to me, you can only do one, which will never happen, obviously, but I would have to choose music. And that almost makes me feel a bit guilty. There are other people who really, really, really want this so much. And I already have my music that I love and adore so much. So like, I think there's like a bit of imposter syndrome / guilt.
I mean, that's the other thing. It's like so interesting hearing you say the guilt thing because you're good at it and you enjoy it.
Thanks.
And it's almost like you're stopping yourself from doing things that you love because, I don't know, there's some kind of like internal feeling of, I don't know what it is, to be honest. This is not a therapy session, so I don't know what I'm trying to like get at. But it's interesting when you love something so much to also feel like, but I guess maybe your love for music just kind of takes over and that's great because you're very, very good at that. So it just, you know, you're in a good position.
Oh, thanks.
Since we've been talking so much about identity today, I actually want to end on who is Troye Sivan today, what's changed, and what's remained steady in your sense of self over the years.
Wow.
It's a big one.
I think I'm a lot more fun than I used to be. That's been like kind of a big thing for me. And definitely the most like kind of confident and settled. And I feel like I can kind of zoom out a little bit and have a big picture view of, you know, things don't freak me out as much as they used to, basically, which is a really nice feeling. And that's all kind of new. So that's all changed, I think. And the things that have stayed the same, I still really care about my family. I still really care about Australia. I think, you know, something that I'm like looking forward to is prioritizing life outside of work a little bit more. Again, like I can zoom out and see a big picture and I kind of know like, okay, I'm going to do this and then I'm going to do this. And then then I'm going to really put in the time to like just be in one place for a while and do other things that are important to me as well.
So who do you want the Troye Sivan of tomorrow to be?
In the immediate future, the things that are important to me are travel as much as you can, have fun, go out, meet people, just enjoy every second of life. And I think that will forever be important to me. But, you know, me in 5 years, I'm sort of doing it with the knowledge that I want things to look kind of different for me in a couple of years. my family is starting to have kids, and there's just a lot that I want to be there for. And so I'm just sort of like going 1 million miles an hour right now, like living it up, enjoying every second of it, because I know that I'm going to make a change soon, I think.
Oh, well, I love that. Lastly, Troy, I like to end each of my podcasts with a list. And with your new album rapidly approaching, I'd love for you to tell us 5 things that most creatively inspired you while making it, that my listeners can then go off and enjoy on their own.
Ooh, okay. Number 1, I would say Demita Joe, the Janet Jackson album. I love that album so much. Go listen to that. I would say go clubbing, but not to like actually, you know what? I was going to say not to like a big cheesy club. Go do whatever the night out is that's going to make you like the least self-conscious, where you can just be with your friends and enjoy. Like, don't make it about hooking up with anyone. Don't make it about like meeting someone or whatever. Just go with your friends to dance. Like, that is the goal of the night. You know, it's not about going and like, oh, should we go get a drink? And then like, do you want to do a loop or whatever? Like, no, you're there to dance. Highly recommend that. If you can prioritize travel, I think that that's like a big thing that I would highly recommend, is like actually going on a holiday, even if it's just like an hour drive away or something from where you live. I think going on group holidays, that's something that really inspired me that I really recommend. Number 4, there's this book called The Ethical Slut that that was really interesting, and I read it at, I think, the right time, where I was like just really being like, oh, cool, free love, like whatever, you know, that whole vibe. That's an interesting read. And lastly, there's that movie, so there's Before Sunrise, then there's Before Sunset. Okay. And I don't know which is the first one, but that's the one that I watched. And that movie, I think, just sort of solidified that like idea of an instant connection, and that idea of enjoying a connection for what it is, no matter how fleeting or not it is. I think opening yourself up to the world, not kind of sitting at home on your phone, and actually going out and like really putting yourself out there, has been a super big principle of mine for the last couple of years. And so, yeah, I recommend that movie.
Amazing. Troy, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That was really fun.
This has been so fun. I've loved having you on the podcast, and I just love you, and I'm excited to see you soon.
I love you too.
Hopefully not through a screen next time.
Yeah, sounds good.
Mwah. What an absolute treat to have Troy on our episode today. I really hope you all enjoyed our conversation. Troy has very generously given Service 95 an exclusive list of the 5 spots he'd recommend to someone looking to get a taste of Australia's queer scene. So be sure to give that a read.